Good evening and welcome again to Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott, and it seems we're always in election season, even though some have just passed. But we all know that voting is the key in elections. If you don't vote, then you get what you get. So tonight our guests are here to talk about the American Middle East Voters Alliance. Retired Judge William Haddad. Bill, great to see you again.
Nice to see you, Kevin.
And Rush, man, I knew I was going to...
Darwish.
Darwish. It's so
Yeah.
easy. I should have gotten that right away.
It's all good.
All right, so both board members of the American Middle East Voters Alliance. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on.
Great to know that there are people working on voters alliances of any stripe in order to get people involved and start to take part. So, Bill, as chair and founder, tell me what got this started? Why is there a need for this particular alliance?
Well, I had been involved with organizations in our community, the Middle Eastern community, and the secular community, the bar associations, all the way up to the time I got on the bench in 2003. And when I left in 2013, the first thing I wanted to do was to organize a political action committee certified with the state of Illinois for the Arab American community. So we're the first PAC, I should say, for the Arab American community in Illinois. And what got me interested in it was the great need we have for representation and power in politics so that our community does not feel disenfranchised, but they feel the empowerment they're going to need to go forward to pursue the American dream, opportunities, and for the protection of their rights. So politics is the way to go.
So the name PAC, the Political Action Committee, has kind of a mixed connotation now. People think of a PAC and they think, oh yeah, those guys who are throwing all that money and trying to swing elections one way or another. But that's not really what...
No, we're an issues PAC. We're not a money PAC. If you look at our budget, we're running very close to nothing. Yeah. But we're an issues PAC. So what we do is we want to get the vote out. There are over 70,000 registered voters, for example, in Cook County alone, that are from the Middle Eastern communities. And what we want them to do is vote and exercise, their power. So, and we endorse candidates who are interested in and sensitive to our issues, and it's paid off. We've gotten a lot of help, I think, in just the last year from Chicago City Council. Alderman Moore, Alderman Dowell, and others have gotten behind resolutions that have been helpful to our community, and especially at this time.
So the organization itself, though, it's Middle East and the issues surrounding the Middle East, but it's not religious in any way. It's very
no,
nonpartisan,
and it's
right?
not. Kevin, it's not. It's all politics in Illinois. Mm-hmm. We're a state PAC. We don't talk about Middle East policy. We are strictly interested in our citizens, American citizens who are who immigrated here mm-hmm. from the Middle East, North Africa, and including we have members from Afghanistan, India, all throughout, and. They are who we represent, but we're not representing policy overseas or any initiatives there. It's all local politics. Tip O'Neill once said all politics is local, right?
Yeah, and it is. So, Rush, as the media director and fellow board member, what is the message that you're trying to get out, and how are you trying to reach the people you need to reach?
We use social media a lot. Facebook is a great way because I would say of the 75,000 people that we try and attract, or some of the Muslim Americans and Arab Americans who live in the Chicagoland area, I would say 80 to 90% of them who are 18 and over have a Facebook page. So we spend a lot of our time trying to reach out to them, trying to connect with them, sharing various stories that's happening not just in Chicago, but around the nation and the world that's affecting us every day. So we want people to start understanding why it's so important to get out and vote, why it's important to be engaged in the process. See, I hate to admit this, as an Arab American, we have too many people who are disengaged, like non-Arab Americans. So it's a challenge for us to get them involved. And slowly but surely, since we started AMVOTE, we are starting to finally see a difference. People are starting to get involved, starting to understand some of the issues that are affecting us every day on a local level. And that's our job at AMVOTE, is to start connecting with our community, and more importantly, not just Arab Americans. That's just a fraction of it. Our job is also to engage local politicians to understand that we are here, we vote, and by the way, we're a very successful community. So you have to start listening to us. And we have needs just like all the other Americans in this country and here in Chicago and the state of Illinois. So that's why the outreach of AMVOTE is so important, because we're a young organization, and the truth is it's this generation right here, right now, that need to start understanding. We need them to engage and to get involved. We can't sit any longer. Look, me and Judge, we talk about this all the time. We're seeing what's happening with these politicians. It's very easy for them to ignore us and to basically treat us poorly. And I'm going to be very blunt here. There are politicians that are just simply put, they're racist. They're racist against Muslims. They're racist against Arabs. And we have to stand up to it. We have to stand up to that bigotry. And at the same time, we have to attract and reach out to the politicians in Illinois, in the Chicagoland area, letting them know that, hey, we're good people, and we want good politicians who understand our needs.
And we vote.
And that we vote, and there's thousands of us that will vote, and we will vote for you if you at least show us that you are caring, that you care about the people, you care about issues, not just that matters to Muslims or Arabs, but to all. And that is our mission, and I will say, you know, Judge Haddad has done a phenomenal job with starting the organization and getting people like myself, you know, involved, so we can try and make that difference.
So, Bill, this is pretty new. I mean, this has only been around. When did you found the organization?
The minute I got off the bench, 2004.
Okay.
And I couldn't do it while I was on the bench, so.
Right. So, what have you seen in the 2 years? What kind of progress are you seeing? What you're hoping to see?
Oh, much better. You know, the idea was to get out the vote so people noticed us. You know, if politicians disparage any group and don't feel they have to pay a political price, they're going to continue to do it. And we saw with the Republican primaries, and I'm not particular to any party, but we heard people, one bragging over the other about how we're going to ban Muslims and we're going to survey their neighborhoods, and none of them are fit for political office, and all these disparaging remarks, which we never heard before. And any minority that takes it in the chin like that has to be considered helpless by them, and they didn't feel they're going to pay a political price. So all politics is local. Here, what we're doing in the last 2 years has been somewhat phenomenal. For example, last November, our voter turnout in Cook County doubled compared to 2014.
Within the Arab American community.
Within the
or
Arab
Middle Eastern
American Muslim
right.
community.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's pretty accurate information from Springfield and our political consultant up here. And in particular areas where we got behind, you know, people for state senate and other offices where we actually were doing the robocalls and really intensifying, it was more than double. So, and that's a turnout that we need. If you've got 1,000 voters in one municipality that are from our community, they can make a difference in an election. So we were very successful there. And we also saw resolutions in the Chicago City Council that we've been sponsoring and pushing that condemn the travel ban, that condemn the registration of Arab Americans, which has been talked about. The internment of Arab Americans, which has been talked about in Washington. Truly.
Even citizen Arab Americans.
Yes, Arab Americans. They say citizen camps. It means citizens. And other measures that are being taken that you know, we oppose. And the City Council of Chicago, like other city councils, has adopted the resolution that was just passed last week unanimously by the Chicago City Council. Deals with that, you know, the travel ban and so on, and it is being sent to Congress and the President. The City of Chicago has taken a step forward. Other municipalities will follow through with that, and we're seeing endorsements pay off. Not all of our people win elections, but we want them to run and participate. But those who we support, in the last election this April, we were involved in 19 municipal elections, and from Orland Park to Plainfield, Bartlett to Oak Lawn. And we went to our community, used robocalls, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and told them, we want you to vote. Number one, vote. If you don't vote, you don't count. Number two, this is a candidate who we feel is sensitive to our needs, who will protect our rights and provide us with the opportunities so our children will have a future in this country. So We've been happy
You've
with
been happy
that.
Yeah. So Rush, you agree? You've seen the turnout, because I know we just finished up with the municipal elections here in Cook County, and historically the turnout is like 15% in municipal elections, which is really very disappointing when you think about how much the municipal elections affect your day-to-day life. You know, as people, when I talk to people, they rarely know that, you know, most of your taxes go to all of your local jurisdictions, your school board, your library board, your park board. So getting people elected to these local offices really matters in the day-to-day life, right? Are you able to get that message? Do you feel that that message resonates?
I think it's definitely starting to happen. I mean, there was just there's different Arab American organizations that that basically have a mission that has some similarities to ours. And I can tell you, 10 years ago, when there were events where local candidates would come out and speak to the community, I was at those events. There'd be 100 people, 150 people. Now, when you go to these events, there's 400, 500, 600 people that are attending these events. People now more than ever are starting to be engaged. And I got to be honest, you know, one of the reasons, because we are seeing what's happening in the political landscape, not just here in Illinois, but on a national level. So that's where I, truth be told, is where it really starts, because that's where they're the most visible. And we have a president right now, which is called the way it is. He's literally targeting Muslims, and he has a Muslim ban, and that resonates on a local level. I mean, this has people concerned in Chicago, in DuPage County, Cook County. So yes, people are starting to pay attention, because once it starts with one person, then it trickles down, because then you start understanding and realizing, well, who else supports this? Who else in Chicago? Or who else in Glen Ellen? What other politicians on a local level support this? And that's what starts to get people engaged. And while they get engaged with that issue, then they start learning issues about, well, what about taxes? How about jobs? So it starts and it just trickles down.
So you, both of you have mentioned the Muslim community, and we know that the ban's coming from, all of the craziness coming out of Washington is directed primarily at Muslims. But from the Middle East, I mean, it's not just the Muslim Middle East.
Well,
there's Christians, there's other denominations. And so how do you avoid the idea that this is just a Muslim issue? Because it clearly
one
it
thing
isn't.
one thing we did is we held a news conference at the Chicago Bar Association last month, and we stood on a stage with 25 other minority bars and groups, and we got up there to first of all, to protect the integrity of the judiciary, for an independent judiciary and the rule of law, because of statements made by the chief executive against the judges who had banned, barred the Muslim ban, or that executive order.
What do you call him, a so-called judge, I think?
So-called, or the Mexican judge is not capable of hearing a case, and we have separation of powers in this country. It's very important to me that we have an independent judiciary, an independent executive, and an independent Congress. And when one tramples on the rights of the other, then it's bad for everybody, and no man is above the Constitution. So we reached out to those organizations, and we had a tremendous amount of support from them. You know, and the other thing to remember, and I always like to say this, Kevin, if I might, we've been in this country for over a century. I mean, the first jet ace in Korea was James Jabara, an Arab American. Michael Mansour, who got the Congressional Medal of Honor, an Arab American. This fellow, whose father was at the Democratic Convention, who was killed in Iraq, Khan, Hamalya Khan, charged a suicide bomber in a vehicle that was headed for an Army mess hall, saved the lives of hundreds of Army soldiers, was a Muslim American. And of course we have our medicine and our science, all the contributions that we see, and Danny Thomas, who came to Chicago, sat down with Cardinal Stritch back then and said, I'd like to build a hospital for children. And Stritch said, take the land in Memphis that belongs to my family and call it St. Jude's. And it became St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which has reversed the childhood mortality rate in leukemia from 95% death to 5% death. That's the research at St. Jude's that was created by Arab Americans who still control the board over there, and Danny Thomas, an Arab American. These people they were banned from immigrating here. We would see those children saved, or those soldiers in Iraq saved, or any of the things that were done by our people. We're not the only minority that's contributed to this country, but we're one of them, and we're Americans, and we should be proud of our heritage and the dream we have here.
Well, you know, this will sound odd, but coming from me, but even as an Irish American, you know, I mean, it's Chicago. You know, if you're Irish, hey, you're on top of the pile, right? Everyone wants to be Irish. But people forget that the Irish came over here under similar circumstances. They were seen as being dirty, lazy, uneducated, violent. You couldn't trust them. You couldn't do anything with them. And it would be great if they just all left.
You know, the first Alien Sedition Act that was ever passed under John Adams was to keep out, quote, wild Irish immigrants. So I guess everybody's had to take it in the chin.
Yeah, but you'd think we would, or you would hope we would learn that now, you know, we've had an Irish Catholic president, you know, as I say, in Chicago, we dye the river green every year, you know, and so you would think that having been through these successive waves of immigrants where all of this is disproven over time, well, they're not lazy, they're not stupid, they're not violent criminals. They're just people who come in and need to make a living. And you'd think, or you'd hope, that we would begin to see a pattern here. And why can't we take that forward and say, well, Arab Americans, and both, you know, you guys are both born and raised here, right? You're Americans. And I don't think that someone stopping and looking at you would say, oh, I know you guys are really Arabs. No, you're Americans. So what would be important to me, I think, is to see that we could get that kind of history spread, that this has happened a lot of times before and has been wrong every time. So why do we think it's right now?
Immigrants are the fuel of the future of this country. There's no doubt about it. Mayor Daley, former Mayor Daley, used to say, if you don't know an Arab American, who's your doctor? We help build, immigrants build this country. And to ban them, bar them, disparage them, defame them, hurts the country, hurts our future. It takes us back. And we've seen it time and time again, but this country is integrated, networked, minorities better than any country in the world. Unfortunately, not with African Americans. I'm sorry about that. It was a tragedy, the way they came here and the way they've been segregated. Other minorities, though, have had the chance, and they've produced in this country. And I got to tell you, at that news conference, we stood shoulder to shoulder with the Cook County Bar of African American Lawyers, the Women's Bar of African American Lawyers, the Decalogue Society of Jewish Lawyers. There was no religion, no race that day. They all stood with us to oppose the travel ban and to stand up for the rule of law. So I'm very proud of our country, and I'm very proud of the bar and the judiciary for what they've been doing.
Well, I think to talk about the bar, you know, when the first travel ban was the kind of, you know, midnight travel ban that was first imposed, you know, it was lawyers who raced to the scene at the airports. And, you know, I'm sure you guys are well familiar with lawyer jokes and all sorts of things like that. But, you know, really, the people who stepped up more than anybody were the attorneys who went down and put themselves on the line and said, this is wrong, and we're here to stop this from happening. It was a remarkable display of grassroots effort. Americans being, you know, practicing Americanism to go out and say, we're not going to allow this travesty to take place. And I think it's important to get, coming back to messaging, right, Rush, get that message out, that this is, you know, Americans standing up to do what they think really our country represents.
Yeah,
right?
There's no doubt it was a very powerful scene. And not only that, I must admit, for me, there was a bit of irony usually has a negative connotation to it. But this was a beautiful moment because the lawyers that were there were diverse. It wasn't a Muslim lawyers, it wasn't Arab lawyers. It was lawyers, as Judge mentioned, just from different parts of different race, different ethnic backgrounds. But more importantly, those 3-4 evenings where you saw thousands of people at O'Hare Airport protesting, most of them were non-Muslims. If somebody told me, as much as I hate bringing up 9/11, but if somebody told me after 9/11 that 15 years from now, when a Syrian or a Muslim family comes through, you know, they go through the gates and then a non-Muslim would come up and hug them and say, welcome to America, I'd say, no way. Here's the $50 in my savings account. There's no way that would ever happen.
Yeah.
But it did. So as crazy, as insane as what Donald Trump did, there came a beautiful part of America in that, yes, we understand there are some people who have a lot of hate, that are racist, and you can't change that. But we also learned that in this country, there are good people, and they're not racist, and they actually look at this from a humanitarian standpoint of what's happening in Syria, not in a racist Orvis red-blooded American viewpoint.
Well,
It
do
was
you think-
quite remarkable.
Do you think that represents progress then? I mean, if you say 15 years ago you would never have guessed that this would happen, and yet it did, a spontaneous outpouring. Does that represent real progress in the way Americans think about ourselves and our country?
I think this was a turning point. I think it is progress to some degree. But in terms of on a national level or on a local political level, I think it's too early. I really do. I think we still have way too many politicians here in Illinois as well that will still use any type of anti-Islam rhetoric to help fire up their base. So the Muslims are still being used as a weapon to get a base excited. And that's a huge problem. I would be dishonest if I told you, well, that moment there, then everything looks like it's all hunky-dory. Definitely not the case. We have a long way to go. And that's why Judge started this organization, started AMVOTE, because there's way too much work to be done. Unfortunately, we are still in the dungeon, but that's why we need to have organizations like AMVOTE to continue to spread what we're all about, what the Muslim community is about, what the Arab community is about, and that's how it changes. We have to change it. It's not going to be the president. It's not going to be local politicians. We, the people here, the Americans, the Arab Americans, the Muslim Americans, we have to change it, and that's what we're doing.
You know, a group that I'm associated with is founded by a bunch of doctors who were originally from Pakistan, so the first generation Americans, American citizens now, but and they raised money for building schools and health clinics back in Pakistan. But I remember one of the doctors was talking to his fellows. He was trying to raise money for then State Senator Barack Obama, who was running for U.S. Senate.
I remember that.
And I remember we were at this fundraiser for him, and this doctor was telling his compatriots, who were all doctors, but they were all from Pakistan. They were first generation, so they were still very connected back to the home country. And the one fellow doing the talking said, he says, I work out in Elgin, he says, and I see, we have some local news to our, Pakistani American community. It's all about what's happening back in Pakistan, he says. And then I look at the Hispanic press, and he says, it's talking to a lot of the Mexican community, and it's all about what's happening in Elgin, not what's happening back in Mexico. He said, so we, as he's talking to his compatriots, we're in America now. We have to be thinking about America and what happens here. And I think that's the kind of transition that you're talking about as well, right? That we're all Americans now. We all have a stake in how this turns out, and it's up to us.
And look at us working together. Rush is a Muslim, I'm a Catholic, and we know that this affects everybody because we're Americans. Anyone who thinks that they're impervious to this threat of hate speech and hate violence that leads to hate violence is naive. There was a Maronite like myself, a Catholic Lebanese fellow down in Tulsa who was murdered by a neighbor that called him a dirty Arab. We've seen Hispanics attacked, Italians attacked, anybody that looks like us, the Indians who were shot up in that bar. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
And it's blind. Bigotry is blind, and so we're all in it together. I don't know who who shouldn't be interested in something like AMVOTE or organization like it. It's important.
Well, what's it, Reverend, is it Niemöller?
Sure.
The German.
First they came.
First they came for first they came for the communists, and I didn't object because I wasn't a communist, and they came for the labor unions, and by the time they came for me, there was no one left, right? And I think we need to keep that in mind.
That's a great piece, that prose that I use when I talk to high school kids about, our duty as Americans. We have to look out for each other. I also go by another statement by a guy I thought was pretty important in my life, who said, whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, so you do unto me. And that's the commandment of love. And we, Rush and I, we adore the same God, the God of Abraham, along with our Jewish friends. And we understand that all religions are important religions. So I suppose that Jesuit Catholic background has made me somewhat guilty, so I feel like I got to pay back. I got to play it forward.
Yeah,
that's one of my motivating forces.
I have that same Jesuit Catholic background.
Yeah.
The problem there is you grow up thinking you know everything. That's
well, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that as well, that religion is so often used as a weapon instead of what it should be used for. And part of getting people out to vote, I think, is to get past that, to say, you vote for people who you think are going to support the values you need to support. And you could be Muslim, you can be Buddhist, you can be Christian, you can be atheist, but if you are there
right.
and you want to support these kinds of, you know, policies that help everybody get along, then that's what counts. And religion shouldn't be an issue. So actually, in the course of your conversations, I mean, how often does that come up? And particularly as the communications guy, I mean, how often does this issue of religion come up when you're out talking?
Absolutely.
Or does it?
In terms of, I will say, within AMVOTE, never, zero. Just doesn't happen. I think when it comes to dealing with the community, we cannot be naive to the fact that there is a Muslim community, there's an Arab community, and I think you have to at least recognize it that way. You know, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
If there's a Muslim community, you have to kind of speak their language a little bit, but it doesn't change the message that we're still trying to convey of the importance of going out to vote. You're not going to find many politicians that are going to spend base their whole campaign about helping Muslims out.
It doesn't seem to be a winning strategy these days.
It's not a winning
Right.
strategy. So we have to educate our community that it cannot be about religion. But this is sad, though, because, you know, we've had a couple people that we supported as well that were Muslim Americans who ran for local office, and we know they didn't win. They didn't have a chance because they had a Muslim last name. And that's, I mean, how heartbreaking is that? If you think about it, they could be by far the most qualified, have the best ideas, and be able to connect with people, but they don't have the right last name. They have a Muslim, they have, God, I hate to say it, like Ahmed. You know, these are names that, you see that on the ballot, you don't even look twice at it. And that's a real problem. But we have to continue to move forward. And when we have local candidates who are Muslims, that's one of the things that our group will do. We have to support them, and we hope that barrier will break.
And every minority has started out this way, the way he's talking. African Americans, everybody. And when they can't get elected, then they support people that will support the community.
Right.
And eventually, in hope that they get government appointments and other ways to show some profile and visibility. Because we want our children to grow up with hope in the American dream. I know the American dream works, and they have to feel that too. I don't want them to be disgruntled or lose faith in the future. And the best way is, if we can't win elections, then we can be appointed to positions where there's representation and people feel good about that.
And it's important to remember how things change, too. You remember John F. Kennedy, he could never get elected as president because he was an Irish Catholic, and his loyalties would be to the Pope in Rome, not to the people in America. Well, he was elected, and he wasn't a puppet of the Pope. At least nothing's ever come out in the subsequent years to show that was true.
I'd say he was not.
Yeah, I'd say he was probably not. But the same is true, I mean, the same will, I'm sure, be true as people get used to it. Right now, there's just too much anger, and it's been used too much as a weapon, I think, to have people feel comfortable, and that's got to change. But I'm reminded of the gay community in San Francisco years ago when they came out, and they said, people have to know we're the guy who lives next door, we're the guy in the cubicle across the aisle from you at work, and we're just like you. You know, we have a job. You know, we live here. I walk my dog, and so I think that same message has to somehow get through that we're just like you. I just got a different name.
Yeah, you know, we could celebrate our differences, but we share our commonality. And you know, there's a group of judges who are gay judges who have an association, a small association, and they stand out and they represent everybody when they do what they're doing. We don't have to agree with anybody's lifestyle to respect it.
Right.
You know, so with our people, with the Muslims and the Christians, with our Arab community, at least we know the same food. We understand the same mothers who
Yeah, we
control
definitely
our
know the
families.
same food, Judge. That's our problem. We know
But
too much
but
of the
we
same
have a
food.
lot in common. We do.
And I can't think of a better way to end it than talking about food. That's a great way. So, all right, Bill, Rush, it's been such a pleasure having you guys here, and I'll have to have you come back and tell us what the progress is. So,
Thank you so much for having
Thank you.
us.
thank you. And thank you once again for watching us here on Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott. You can find us every Saturday night at 8 on Comcast Channel 19 and see us on the web at publicperspective.tv. So until next time, thank you and good night.